Bibliophiles of the Internet. My name is Adriana and today I'm here to bring you my May wrap-up. Before we get started, I just wanted to catch you all up on my TBR challenge and how that's going because sometimes I forget to mention that. For April, my TBR challenge was to read a book that was not originally published in English. And I did complete that challenge because I read Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. All of this goes to preface my May TBR challenge, which was to read a book that was not a novel. So that could be anything from a novella to a collection of short stories, a nonfiction memoir, a comic, a manga, and I will leave it up to you to decide whether I completed that challenge or not. So with that said, let me tell you about all of the books I read in May. The very first two things I read in May were graphic novels, and they were lent to me by, you guessed it, my good friend Steven, so thank you very much, Steven. The first one was In Real Life by Cory Doctorow and Jen Wang. This graphic novel is about a young girl named Anda who is a gamer, and she joins an online all-girls guild. And while she's out there collecting coins and slaying creatures, she meets this other player whose gaming experience is very different from hers. I quite enjoyed this graphic novel. To start, I think it's visually stunning. What you see on the cover is definitely what you get on the page. There's a really bright and bold color scheme, and it makes it feel like the world is coming off the page. Plus, there are some subtle themes of female empowerment present in this story, which I enjoyed. For instance, the main character, Anda, is overweight, so fat girls represent. And then there's also talk about what it means to game as a female and having girls who play as female characters within online games. So there were definitely some very interesting elements at play in this story, which I enjoyed, but at the same time I felt like it was underdeveloped. It was short, the ending was kind of cheesy and unbelievable in my opinion, and all in all, I don't think there's very much about this story that is particularly memorable. So overall, I ended up giving In Real Life 3.5 out of 5 stars. And the second graphic novel that Steven lent me was Anyas Ghost by Vera Broskol. This graphic novel is about a girl named Anya who wanders into a cemetery and falls down an empty well. And by the time she escapes, a ghost has actually followed her home. I really enjoyed this story because it ended up being a lot more creepy and twisted than I initially expected, so that was a nice surprise. I also quite enjoyed Anya as a character because she is also struggling with bullying and alienation. She has a very low self-esteem. She's Russian, so that makes her stand out from other people, and that makes her a target for the popular kids. So she's just struggling with socialization and with making friends, and so that makes her an interesting character to me. So overall, I really enjoyed Anyas Ghost, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I read volumes 6 through 8 of Owari no Seraph by Tagaya Kagami and Yamato Yamamoto. I've talked about this series before, so a brief rundown is that it's a post-apocalyptic story where a majority of the adults have been wiped out by a mysterious disease, and at the same time, vampires rose to power to enslave the surviving humans. And it's also about a small faction of humans who come together to form a military defense, and they utilize demon weaponry to fight back against the vampires. I will say that Owari no Seraph feels derivative of other manga series that I've read or other anime series that I've seen, so I'm not going to stand here and say that it's totally original. It's nothing that you've ever seen before. It's groundbreaking. It's none of that stuff, but it is just a really good story. And I do think in very small ways, the characters sometimes try to subvert the tropes in which they fall into. What I really feel is the driving force behind this series is the relationship between Yu and Mikaela, the two main characters, and how they're on different sides of this war. And I think that's a very compelling relationship. So I unapologetically enjoy this series, and I also really like the anime series, which is currently airing at the moment. So I gave all of these volumes 4 stars or above. After that, I finally read Stormdancer by Jay Kristoff. I actually did a full-length, spoiler-free video review for Stormdancer, so I don't want to talk about it at all, and I will link that down below. And that video is also part discussion on the topic of cultural appropriation, so if that interests you in any way, please check that out. All in all, I personally quite enjoyed Stormdancer, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I read the next 9 volumes of Skita Inayo by Kanea Hazuki. This story is a blend of romance and drama. It's about a young girl named Mei who is very used to being alone and to being bullied. But one day she ends up roundhouse kicking the most popular boy in school in the face, and that is Yamato. The two of them strike up a very unlikely friendship, which eventually leads to a tentative romantic relationship, and that is their first serious relationship for both of them, so they're just kind of trying to figure out how to really be with one another and what it means to think about another person. Honestly, I don't typically go for romances and dramas, but there's something so raw and beautiful about Skita Inayo that just hits me square in the chest every single time. And I think that it's because there's a real focus in this story on how all of the characters are struggling with something. They all have issues with self-image and self-esteem, and they all have their various insecurities, no matter how popular or how beautiful they are on the surface. And the issues that Mei and Yamato face as a result of a lack of communication, I think is very authentic. It's very real. I can really see people who are in relationships having these types of problems. And like I said, really all of these characters are to some extent dealing with bullying, and I think that's a really good theme that is explored very well throughout this series. I just love it so much, and I very highly recommend it. So I ended up giving almost all the volumes of Skita Inayo that I read this month 4 stars or above. After that, I read volumes 5, 6, and 7 of Pandora Hearts by Jun Mochizuki. Basically, it's about a main character named Oz Vesarius who is cast down into the abyss on his 15th birthday. And in order to fight his way back to the real world, he has to make a deal with this chain, this demon named Alice, and it kind of all snowballs from there. I cannot emphasize how much I love this manga series. It's so incredibly complex, it's dark, it's twisted, and it goes in so many incredible directions. And I do think that for some readers, Pandora Hearts will be too confusing and too complex, but I love it. I can keep up with its breakneck speed, and I love how everything can flip on a dime. But when these huge plot twists happen, it's all very plausible, and you can see how it fits into the story. So you can tell that the mangaka had planned a lot of this out beforehand, which is very impressive because it's a super complex and intricate story. It's crazy, it makes my brain hurt, but I love it so freaking much. And I'm finally to the point in the manga where the anime and the manga diverged. So now I will be going into completely new territory, and I am very excited to continue this series very soon. I have so much freaking love in my heart for Pandora Hearts, so of course I gave these next 3 volumes 4 stars or higher. And the very last thing I read in May was House of Many Ways by Diana Wynne Jones. This is the sequel to Howl's Moving Castle, and it's about a young girl named Charmaine Baker who has to watch over her great uncle's house. Under normal circumstances, house sitting wouldn't be too difficult of a job, but Charmaine is an incredibly lazy person, and her great uncle is a wizard, and his house can compress time and space. So when Charmaine opens any given door in his house, there's no telling where or when she will end up. I thought the writing was very true to Diana Wynne Jones' style. It was chaotic, it was frantic, but at the same time it was very charming. There's so much craziness happening at any given time in this story, but at the same time the narrative voice is very whimsical and laid back and kind of taking it all in stride. This story is full of imagination, adventure, and a great cast of characters, both new and old. Hal, Sophie, and Calcifer do make a reappearance in this story, and they play a very heavy role in the second half of the book in particular, so it was great to see them again, but at the same time we also got to meet and got to know some new and interesting characters. Also, every story that Diana Wynne Jones writes in this world is just so incredibly funny. I had a blast with this book. I was pleasantly surprised by the story, and I thought it was very entertaining overall, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So those were all of the books I read in May. In the comments down below, please let me know if you have read any of the books I talked about in this wrap-up, and let me know what was your favorite book that you read in May, or what do you plan to read now that we're in June. But that is everything I had for this wrap-up video today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page.